This work of fiction is intended for mature audiences. It contains themes of psychological horror and violence presented in a restrained manner. All characters and events are entirely fictional. The narrative is not intended to glorify or encourage harmful behavior.
I still remember that overcast autumn morning when I first set foot in this strange new town. My name is Alandrea Albeana, a tiny, thin, pale 18-year-old with a cascade of untamed red hair that seemed to mirror the inner chaos I felt. Today was my first day at a new school, and as I stepped through the wrought iron gates, an eerie chill seeped into my bones. The damp mist clung to the sidewalks like restless memories, and every step I took echoed with the weight of unspoken secrets, yet untold. I had been uprooted from everything familiar by my mother, a deeply religious, unyielding woman who ruled my life with strict decrees and an absolutely iron hand. For as long as I could remember, she had forbidden me from spending even one moment alone with any teenage boy, insisting that my every move be carefully watched. Her words, delivered with a severity that allowed no argument, haunted me as much as the solemn quiet of the school's dim hallways. Inside the building, the fluorescent lights hummed softly, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper ominous warnings. I moved slowly, almost as if I were invisible, my eyes fixed on the ground in a desperate bid to avoid unwanted attention. The halls were lined with old murals and faded photographs of faces long past witnesses to horrific secrets and maddening sorrows that had seeped into these learned walls over time. Every hushed conversation and sidelong glance made me feel as if I were a fragile ornament, misplaced in a world that prized conformity and normalness. I clutched my leather-bound journal, as if it were a lifeline, scribbling down my observations and trembling thoughts. In that moment, I realized I was not just the new girl. I was a canvas on which others' expectations and prejudices were about to be painted in dark, disturbing hues. A soft, almost imperceptible chill seemed to follow me from classroom to classroom, as though unseen eyes were constantly watching my every move. Even as the teacher's voice blended with the drone of the old ventilation system, I sensed that each mundane lesson hid deeper, unspoken truths. I felt that this day, this very moment, was a portal. I was stepping not only into a new school, but into a story written in vile shadows and stoic, silent judgments. It was then I first sensed a presence, not an external spirit, but something stirring deep within me. A whisper of defiance mingled with terror, a premonition that the quiet desperation of my life was about to transform into something far more profound. That day, in every fallen footstep and every lingering gaze, I sensed that my existence was poised on the brink of an unnameable void. By mid-morning, the school's corridors had become a stage for silent torment. I moved through the halls like a wisp of smoke, barely noticed by those around me, yet relentlessly observed by eyes that seemed to follow my every move. The murmur of conversations and occasional laughter filled the air, but to me, they sounded hollow, like a recitation of evil verses directed at a lost, lonely soul, me. There were mumblings that I was not entirely like the rest, a rumor here, an insinuation there. Some said I was cursed, others hinted at a mysterious lineage that set me apart. In the mirror of my mind, I was both the victim of idle gossip and the keeper of an otherworldly secret that I had yet to understand. My unruly, long red hair and pale complexion marked me as different, and in each passing moment, I could feel the weight of those stares as if they were invisible hands tightening around me. During class, while lessons blurred into a background noise, I scribbled feverish notes in my journal. every word was an attempt to capture the indescribable isolation I felt, a loneliness so profound. It resonated in every creak of the old floorboards and every distant clack of a locker door. The memory of my mother's strict, sacred rules, her warnings against any association with boys, her unwavering belief in a rigid religious moral code, mingled with my present humiliation. They were etched into my soul like a relentless mantra, a constant reminder of the boundaries imposed on me by others. At lunchtime, I retreated to a quiet corner of the bustling cafeteria, choosing solitude over the risk of any unwanted attention. Even there, the stares of my peers felt invasive. It was at that moment I noticed a small group of girls, their smiles too knowing, their eyes reflecting a curious mix of sympathy and a something darker. Their glances were not merely those of idle interest. They hinted at a secret understanding, a silent communication that spoke of hidden truths behind the everyday cruelties. In that charged atmosphere, the subtle shiver that had haunted me earlier deepened. I began to feel as if I were marked, destined to be at the center of forces both seen and unseen. My inner world, long filled with suppressed frustration and agony, was quietly kindling a power that I could barely comprehend, much less contain. It was as though every slight, every whispered rumor was fanning the flames of something extraordinary, a dark energy waiting to be released. When the final bell rang, I left the building with mixed relief and a lingering dread. The hallways, with all their overly oppressive gossip and judgment, had set in motion a shift in me, a subtle awakening that I had only just begun to understand. I wondered if the isolation I had always endured was merely a prelude to the power that now stirred in the depths of my soul. I knew, as I clutched my journal and stepped into the cool twilight, that nothing would ever be quite the same. The boundaries between the known and the unknown were blurring, and the unknown horror that had long resided at the edge of my existence was preparing to step into the light. That evening, in the solitude of my small, sparse, dimly lit room, I sat by a single pane window that framed a night full of secrets. The distant toll of a church bell, its sound heavy with centuries of tradition, reminded me of my mother's rigid and unyielding beliefs. With pen in hand, I began to pour my thoughts into the pages of my journal, each sentence a release of the day's stifling tension and silent despair surrounded by my peers. As I wrote, I felt an unfamiliar stirring deep inside me, an energy both unnerving and alluring. It began as a subtle tremor, a sensation that seemed to quicken the beat of my heart. I could almost feel that the repressed emotions, the constant suppression, had awakened something once deep and dormant within me. Was it anger? A longing for freedom? Or perhaps an ancient power, a hidden family legacy passed down through time? Tentatively, I tested this new force. I concentrated on a small object on my desk, a glass figurine that had gathered dust in the corner. To my astonishment, a slight vibration ran through the air, and the object quivered as if caught in a gentle, unseen current. I exhaled slowly, heart pounding, as the realization sank in. My pain, my isolation, was now the spark for something unearthly and extraordinary. In that pivotal moment of triumph, I recognized that the power was not a mere trick of a stressed mind. It was real, a dark, mysterious energy that responded to every surge of my emotions. I felt as if I had been unshackled, liberated from the suffocating control that had defined my entire existence. For the first time, I tasted a freedom laced with both exhilaration and untamed foreboding. The night grew deeper, and as I experimented further, a shifting object here, a candle's flame dancing more wildly than it should, I began to understand that this power was not without its costs. Each small act of defiance carried with it a promise of transformation, but also a subtle warning. The force within me was like a double-edged sword, capable of both delivering unbridled freedom and inflicting irreversible damage. I recalled the tales my mother had recounted, stories of retribution, of supernatural forces exacting punishment on those who strayed from the righteous path. But now, as the power pulsed within me, I felt a stirring of something far older, far more primal. It was as if I were on the cusp of transcending the limitations of a life defined solely by fear, longing, and oppression. In that intimate communion with the night, I allowed myself to dream of a future where I could reshape the world around me. Yet even as a spark of hope emerged, I could not escape the unsettling thought that I was also tampering with forces beyond my control. The power was a seducing, seductive promise, whispering that the pain of my past might finally be transformed into an instrument of change, a chance to rewrite the rules of my cruel destiny. As sleep finally claimed me, my dreams were filled with visions of shifting shadows and ghostly figures. I was both the architect of a new reality and its unwilling captive, a fragile girl teetering on the edge of an abyss that beckoned with promises of both vengeance and complete liberation. In that twilight realm between waking and sleep, I understood that the entity within me was only just beginning to rise. The days that followed were a blur of muted triumphs and rising tension. At school, I found myself drawn to the forgotten corners where light barely penetrated, places that seemed to hold memories of past sorrows and lost hopes. In these dim recesses, I began to practice the subtle art of channeling the energy that now simmered beneath my form. Each controlled tremor in the air, each small movement of an object without physical contact, was a silent witness of my growing power. It wasn't long before my transformation and abilities caught the attention of those around me. A group of girls, their smiles concealing envy and something else entirely, began to observe my every step. One fateful afternoon, they cornered me near the auditorium, a spacious room whose high ceilings and echoing acoustics amplified every sound. Their voices, light and mocking at first, soon turned sharp as they traded barbed remarks meant to humiliate and bully. I felt that familiar surge of dread rising within me, tempered now by a newfound resolve. Instead of recoiling, I closed my eyes and let the energy within me swell. In that suspended moment, the laughter died down to a stunned silence. The force I had been nurturing for so long burst forth with a controlled intensity, sending objects flung across the room and causing a ripple through the air that left everyone momentarily speechless. No scars or overt injury marked the scene, yet the impact was undeniable. The startled faces of my aggressors, the quiet awe of onlookers, and the palpable shift in the atmosphere all testified to something beyond the ordinary had gotten everyone's attention. It was not an act of brute violence, but a measured outpouring of the power that had long lain dormant within me. In that moment, I was both heroic avenger and the unwilling victim, a solitary figure standing at the intersection of fear and rebirth. News of the incident spread quickly, and soon shock and gossip replaced outright ridicule. I was no longer seen merely as the timid new girl, but as an omen of inexplicable change, a symbol of both dark ability and the perilous cost of unbridled emotion. My mother's austere authority began to crumble under the weight of scandal and disbelief, though I felt no satisfaction in her diminishing power. Instead, a hollow sense of isolation settled over me, a reminder that the energy I had unleashed was as much a burden as it was a friend. Every day, I wrestled with the realization that the power within me was growing stronger, and that each use of it blurred the lines between the pain of the past and the promise of a future reshaped by my own hand. In the moment of every whispered prayer from frightened onlookers, I heard a warning that the dark force I had embraced might one day demand a terrible price. Nightfall arrived like a silent decree. The town, already reeling from the strange events at school, found itself shrouded in an atmosphere heavy with expectancy. I had retreated to the sanctuary of an old church basement, a place that served as both a safe harbor and a stage for my inner transformation. In that quiet, dust-laden chamber, the air pulsed with a mysterious energy that seemed to merge the natural with the supernatural. There, amid the stillness, I could feel the full weight of what I had become. The power that had once been a mere spark was now a steady, throbbing flame coursing through every fiber of my being. I sensed that every hardship, every moment of isolation and control had been the catalyst for this metamorphosis. In that charged solitude, the boundary between the world I knew and a darker, more enigmatic realm had begun to dissolve into other. The voices of the unseen pressed upon my mind, not with explicit demands, but with a quiet insistence that every injustice and every spoken slight be accounted for. They urged me to embrace a destiny that was both liberating and irrevocably tragic. In a sudden, heart-stopping vision, I saw my mother before me, her expression a mixture of fright and disbelief, a silent plea for holly redemption that I knew could no longer be possible. Compelled by forces beyond my understanding, I stepped out of that basement and into the heart of the town. The streets were empty under a sky, heavy with tumultuous clouds that threatened a wrathful storm. As I walked, a chill fell over the few who dared to come outside. Faces turned toward me, etched with a blend of fear, pity, and wonder. They had gathered to witness a reckoning, a moment that felt both inevitable and surreal. Raising my trembling hands, I allowed the full extent of the energy within me to manifest. It was not an eruption of overt gore, but a controlled, otherworldly surge that disrupted the very fabric of the evening. Sidewalks trembled, streetlights flickered uncertainly, and a chorus of anguished voices, more a collective gasp than overt screams, filled the air. Buildings shuddered as if burdened by a history of unspoken memories, and the ground beneath us seemed to ripple, opening small fissures that swallowed the last vestiges of light. In those final moments, as the familiar world was engulfed by a consuming darkness, I became acutely aware of the duality that defined my existence. I was both the orchestrator of this eerie transformation and its unwilling vessel. A girl who had once been defined by fear and control, now bound to a power that defied everything around me. I saw my own reflection in a fragmented window, a pale figure with wild red hair and red eyes that glowed with a quiet, unsettling intensity. As the overwhelming surge of emotion and energy reached its peak, I felt a profound mix of pity and liberation. The horror I had set in motion was not a simple act of rebellion, but the tragic culmination of years spent in controlled isolation and suppression. In that final, haunting instant, I understood that my freedom came at a price. I had become both the victim of my past and the catalyst for a future steeped in perpetual darkness. Now, as I recount these events from the depths of my changed reality, I am haunted by the truth that some forces, once awakened, can never be tamed. The memory of that night, a night when the world around me was transformed by a quiet, relentless power, will linger in the minds of those who witnessed it forever. And if you ever find yourself alone in the dark, remember that the greatest terror sometimes lies not in external monsters, but in the hidden, all-consuming power that dwells within us all. This is my story, a legacy of sorrow, a cautionary tale of repressed pain, and a reminder that even in the quietest hearts can reside a darkness too powerful and potent to ever be fully contained upon this earthly world.
Hello, my Nightmare Obsession fans. We hope you loved this story, and were almost frightened to death, left wanting even more. If so, please share video and our channel link with friends and family, and ask them to subscribe, like, comment, and share with their friends and family too. We really want to create more nightmarish horror stories for you, so please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel now. We would really appreciate it. Thanks so much.